not long later, her brother and her cousin turn up with knives. They would leave bananas on my table for me at school to remind me of what a monkey I was. You end up presenting a face that's confident but that's broken.
What do you wish someone had said to you?
Not just said it to me, but helped me to understand that I wasn't a mistake.
Welcome to Conversations with Haych, and we have a true stalwart in the UK Christian and gospel industry. One, if not the most well-known UK gem. We have a broadcaster, a TV and radio presenter, and an author, a singer-songwriter with his group River Songs. He's been featured on the BBC, TBN, CBN, and more. He has an OB. OB?
Yeah.
He has an OB. He is the African Prince scarf wearer. The father, the husband, the multifaceted Uncle Muyiwa, who has a party trick where he says his full name. I don't know if he still utilizes it. I did try and learn it, but I got stuck. So I thought, let me just let him say what his full name is rather than embarrass myself. Also known as...
Man, well, thank you so much. So my name is Muyiwa Olarewaju Shalom Orintinjogola. That one.
It's perfect.
I usually say, you know, if you can't speak in tongues, just employ the name. just someone will think you're spiritual. Just and then interject it with Jesus.
Yeah, throw it at the end.
And hallelujahs.
So for those who don't know who you are, who is Muyiwa, and how do you bring yourself into all the different things that you do?
So I guess get asked that question every now and then. I'm always torn as to do I go generic and say I'm a black man, you know, husband, and then I realize there's so many different sides to us. But on any given day, you're wondering what's the, in a setting like this, what's the prettiest side that you want to show everyone. So I'm a father of 2 boys, and my wife, Lola, she's an actress who really allows me, without her I won't be able to do what I do. So the question of how I'm able to bring what I am to different settings is because the home life is steady. So in terms of work, defining by work, I'm a broadcaster, singer, songwriter, and I do TV. Have done in-flight entertainments and all that. I'm of Nigerian heritage. I'm the first son of 4 children, so I have 2 older sisters and 1 younger brother. And yeah, my hardware is not as hard-wearing as it used to be. So you know, now when I run, everything hurts. You know. So.
I completely get it. I completely get it. I'm getting to a stage where it's like, okay, why does this hurt and it didn't hurt yesterday?
Oh man, you're fine.
No,
you're
I
fine.
would say when we hit a certain, I feel like when you hit 30, something in your body just changes.
Maybe it does, but I can tell you when you hit 40, then you know something changes. When you go beyond that. But you don't even have to know. It will tell you I changed. Oh, I have been changed. Angels don't call my name.
Okay, I'm going to remember that. I'm going to remember that. When I get there, I'm going to remember that. Uncle Boy said it's going to change even more. What was your... Let's go back a bit now. What was your early childhood like? And what are the key stories and experiences that you kind of remember that are still, you know, stick with you today?
So my early childhood was like most middle class kids, middle class, upper middle class kids. It was comforting. It was cushioned. Went to private schools. You know, did all that. It was fun. In terms of stories, and it's interesting how the mind works over time. Even though it was fun, once you mentioned that, because the first picture that came to mind was of me sitting outside my parents' home, now I'm about 7 or 8 years old. My sisters have been moved abroad.
Yeah.
They're living here, and the second one, my second sister, who was closest to me, who's, you know, she's a bit of a nutcase. Well, this is, and everyone knew. They used to say she was the adopted child in the family because we're all quite dark like me, and then she's almost your complexion. But she was just different. She had a great mind of her own. My two older sisters are certified geniuses. You know, not that we thought they were smart; they were measured to be smart. And this particular one, she was just one of those that she would speak her mind. She would tell you what she thought. You know. So for that, she used to be considered a bit weird, and so when she left, I can remember vividly just sitting outside my parents' house, and I guess I was depressed as a 7-year-old, and I was like, I felt like my best friend had gone, even though I didn't think I was that close to her. And I was sad, and I honestly, there was a pot of washing powder, and I actually thought of drinking it. I thought, and it's ridiculous. As a 7-year-old, you're thinking of drinking. So when you ask me about memories, that stands to mind right now in this moment. But it was. I mean, it wasn't a life of opulence because my parents were frugal in their lifestyle. But I had everything I could ever want, except for my sisters around.
So what was it like for you then? Because obviously you live in Nigeria, and I think at the age of 9, you move over to the UK, not having the best experience when you first come over here. What was that like for you after seeing your sisters do a similar move, the same move basically? How did you feel in that moment, if you can remember?
So at that stage in life, you're not really processing it as sequentially as that. You just the experience you're having at that particular moment, what you feel, what you see, what's around you. And so for me, it was the experience was. I mean, it was, looking back now, it was harrowing to start with. And it's a story I've told before. I remember getting off the plane. Cold hits me upside the head. I'm like, it's freezing. And I remember getting on the tube. This was my first experience of the tension between races. I get on the tube with my sister. I see some white guys standing up. Now, I'm coming from a culture where if there's a younger child next to an older, you defer to the older. So I'm sitting down, I see these bigger boys, so I get up for them, and my sister yanks my arm down and she says to me, "Don't get up, they'll think you're scared of them." And I'm like, what's that? Then later on I realize the tension between people and the need for you to create this aura around you and let people know by just how you look at them that I will cut you up, and you know and all that at that early age, and then getting to the home of my uncle, who was quite a well-to-do man, and of course parents think we'll just leave you there for a minute, and the first thing he says to me, he's yeah, I've come, you're going to suffer. like oh wow, when I think about it, I mean, at that age, whatever. When I think about it now, I'm like, dude, he had issues. He needed counseling. And how are you saying that to a child as a child walks in? But that became a self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of my experience. So, and it's only recently, my older sister wrote a book. I think it's called I Made It Through or something. And reading the book, I realized some of what she went through. Oh man, it's heartbreaking. And because she was, at that point, I think she was 18, and she'd gone through the whole gambit of not just doing education, but also becoming a second mother to the kids, and what that did to her in terms of her feeling like she lost out on her childhood, her feeling like not being appreciated by people and losing out on opportunities and things like that, and that made her bitter and all that. Reading that book made me realize that I thought I had it bad, but she had it so much worse.
Wow.
You know, and those are some of the experiences of coming here and trying to get through. But you know, the interesting thing is, it's not terribly dissimilar to a lot of people. You would hear the stories, not just of Africans, but Caribbeans. I mean, I was speaking to a lady who's our next door neighbor, and when she's telling me of, now she's 85, when she's telling me of her story of coming over here to UK from Barbados, like, how is that? How is it possible for a human being to go through such suffering? But here she was, 85. She's still standing. You know, the scars to prove it. But you know, so yeah, it was hard, harsh, and that informs how I bring up my children and how I am with my children. But yeah, we made it.
How did it feel like moving away from being with your parents, living, as you talked about, that middle class lifestyle? You talked about, you know, going to private school and these types of things, and then coming here, not having them, but having your sisters, and then your upbringing essentially being through your uncle or wherever you were going to be in that period of time. How did that impact you, do you reckon?
It was, well, I could say negative, but it was horrible. Yeah, it was horrible, because really, when you say living with uncles, I was always surplus to requirements in the home for one reason or another. Now, of all my siblings, I was called the best behaved. I was the compliant kid. I never the one that argued or anything. But some kind of way, in the end, the family I would be with would be like, you know what, you've got to go. I remember age of 12 or 13, I think it was, another uncle had told me I've got to leave. Now, where am I? Where do I go? And he was like, you got to go, you know. And I remember Borough High Street, coming out Borough High Street, and I called my sister who lived in East London at that point. And I mean, people will probably be wondering, so where on earth are your parents? You know, but you know, that's a discussion for another time. But remember Borough High Street now, 12, 13, I'm walking, my belongings are in a black bag, and the black bag splits. My clothes fall on the floor, and people just carry on walking, and I feel so sorry for myself. I start crying. Now, think about this. My socialization as a boy was such that we were told, literally told, not that you imagine, we were told, you are the leaders of the future. You know, you were coached on how you walked, coached on how you talked, and so I go for a leader of the future to my clothes on the floor in this crazy country, and no one's paying any mind, and I'm crying, and that coupled with the bad experiences at school, because I went to a school where when I got there, I was the effing African.
Wow.
And it wasn't like now where, you know, it's cool to be African. It was so bad that I wanted to change my name to Stephen Byright. And I actually tried.
To Stephen Byright?
Yeah, let me tell you where the Byright came from. There used to be a clothing store called Mr. Byright. It was a cheap clothing store. It was like a Primark back then. You'll buy a pair of trousers. I'm not saying this happens with Primark, but maybe it does. You buy a pair of trousers, blue pair of trousers. When you wash it twice, it starts to go light blue. So that was Mr. Byright, and for some reason I had an affinity for them, so I wanted to change my name to Stephen Byright. Then I remembered that if my mum ever found out, she will beat me back black and blue. So I thought, okay, I'll just be Muyiwa Olarewaju. And that was because of the negative experiences at school. I mean, they would leave bananas on my table for me at school to remind me of what a monkey I was. you know. So you got that going on at school, then you got at home dealing with not so welcoming and family, and then the economic circumstances were difficult. So it was always just all round drama, you know.
Negativity.
It was, and so I thank God for the church, thank God for Christ, because that was my saving grace. That if not, God knows.
What do you wish someone had told you during and while all this is happening? What do you wish someone had said to you?
I wish someone had not just said it to me, but helped me to understand that I wasn't a mistake. Yeah. I was, I said earlier on, my two sisters, I mean, they're known to be prolific. I mean, my oldest sister was at university at the age of 16. No, 15, one of the two. The next one went to the age of 15 in Tunbridge Wells. So these were super sharp women. And then I came along, dull as a brush, as they call me. But actually, it wasn't I was dull. It's just my processing was different. You know, and I would get called all sorts of names, even by my family. Yeah. And my sisters were good enough to protect me from that. But you know, they could only do so much because they were fighting their own battles. You know, so I got to believe in that I wasn't so smart. I got to believe in that I couldn't read a book without pictures. I got to believe in that no one really wanted me around. I remember a next door neighbor. I lived in a community that was mostly white, and my next door neighbor, of course, they were white, and I would play with the daughter. She was about my age. I thought that now we're talking age 13 or 14, and I remember now I had no concept of boyfriend girlfriend. I didn't know. So I think I said to her, "Oh, so we're friends now, aren't we?" or something like that. So she took that to mean
boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah. So she must have been upset. So I didn't know she was upset. How I knew was not long later, her brother and her cousin turned up with knives. Right? Yeah. And I remember one of them was Terry. Turned up with a knife, said, "If you ever effing talk to my effing," I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? And at that point, I was like, okay, so the lesson I learned weren't leave white girls alone. Two, I'm not, that's...
At that point.
Yeah, at that point. You said that's what it did to me. I was like, don't talk to white girls, don't talk to white people, don't talk to anyone. So I retreated into my world. Now I'm an effing African. Now I'm this kid no one can, and then I'm looking in my own environment, the words that are being said about me. So I wish someone had gotten hold, and actually that sort of happened in the church later on. But I wish someone had gotten hold of me more intentionally and helped me to unravel the mess that had grown in my heart, in my mind, because all that affects how you see affects what you believe you can be, and what you believe you can be affects what you attempt to do, and what you attempt to do is the limit that you put on how far you rise and what impact you can make in the world and things like that.
Is that where your kind of shyness, you talk about being shy?
I think so.
Do you think that's where that kind of developed from?
It's interesting you say that. It's interesting you say that because I was that kid when I was growing up that was full of energy, talked to everyone, and then I got to a stage where I would just retreat. retreat into myself, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that, actually, to be honest, because I was always the outgoing kid, and then at a point I became the introvert, which I've remained. Oh, so if you ever see me on stage, what you see on stage is that's not it. I tell you, is the hilarious thing though is I remember, and this is fascinating thinking about it. I'm thinking as I'm talking. My second son, everyone says he looks just like me, and we're alike in a manner. It was his birthday a few years back. He's now 12, maybe when he was about 7, 8. And my wife had his cousins and a couple of friends over, just a small gathering. And I looked around, where's my son? Can't find him. So I went upstairs. I can't see him. Went into my bedroom. I heard some noise in the corner. I look over in the corner. My son is laying on the floor with his iPad. So I said, Lecky, I said, your friends are downstairs. He said, I don't want to be there. I want to be here by myself. So I went to my wife and said, your son, you know, at that point, it's her son. I said, your son is upstairs. And she looked at me, she says, where do you think he gets it from? Oops. So it's interesting how growing up, that wasn't me, but I learned to be that. And some kind of way, passed it on to my poor son.
Wow. Because what it sounds like is that when you are what we know you as, Uncle Muyiwa, Muyiwa the presenter, Muyiwa the singer, Muyiwa the... When you're out in front of us, it seems as if it's not that it's a different person, but it's a different side of you that you're allowed to then open up and be that. Whereas when you're talking, it's like the experiences you've had made you retreat back into yourself. But when you get the chance to, you're back into the old you of who was outgoing, who was energy and all those types of things when you are.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, I mean, you could try and shock your audience, say that's my Sasha Fierce. For those who know, Google Beyonce, you know what that means. But it actually is, and this has been helpful for me actually, just to think it through. It is a safe moment on stage where I feel like I could show you this, and be loud and rambunctious and be this thing, knowing that actually, you know, I think I'm going to be all right. But when I'm outside of that, there's a knowing thoughts at the back of my head. Am I okay to hang with you? Am I okay? Am I just that effing African in this room? Wow. You know, you and those, which is why, you know, when and forgive me, I'll speak from my worldview as a Christian. When the book talks about renewing your mind, it's unraveling those things, because if not, they hold you bound, and I can't say that I've totally unraveled all of it, because sometimes it's just easier for me not to just
take a break,
leave me alone, leave me in my corner, and I'm comfortable with my so it's a mix of my confidence as a person, but the raw material the confidence is working with is broken stuff that needs to be fixed. You see, so you end up presenting to people a face that's confident but that's broken. So you might be confident, but you don't need to be that forceful or that rude, you know. But all it is the software is broken, you know.
It's interesting because not a lot of people would know that about you, in terms of like you being so within yourself because of moments that happened when you came here. Not even when you were in Nigeria, you were you were we see to be on stage, or who we see to be on the radio, or who we hear to be on the radio or on the TV, which is, it's fascinating, but it's like, to a degree, some people might say it's a bit upsetting, because it's like, not that they want you to be loud or at the forefront, but they'd want you to feel like you can be who you are throughout. And obviously everyone goes through situations where they did doubt themselves, or have fear, or situations and experience have built them up to not do certain things regardless of what age they're at. So it's just interesting. And
But you know, the funny thing is, when you think how many others are like that, because life happens to all of us. Life happens. It's just how what support systems we have to help us get through, and what is it that we're telling ourselves, or that we've been told about ourselves, that we end up allowing to become the truth in our reality. So we all go through it. It's just how many of us are walking not realizing that actually this is what's going on with me, to understand ourselves, to start the journey of healing and repair. And what makes it worse is when we now see people, we watch people acting up, as we say, all we see is the acting up. We don't have enough time or space or willingness to say, actually, what could have happened to this person?
where's that stemmed from?
Yeah, but we don't have time for that, because we're in a time now where, you know, what I need now. So I need you to be perfect now. I need you to give me time with my stuff, but I need you to be perfect now. If you're not perfect, I'm gone. You know what I mean? And so for me, it's just, as you were talking, I'm thinking, how many people are walking wounded in our society, who we've just cast them on a heap, and we justify with labels. So this person is manic depressive, or this person is just an angry black man, or this person is just white trash, or this person is just a woman. She just a dog because she goes with everyone. You know, we just put labels on it because it's easier to label and keep moving, as opposed to stop and try and understand and have the conversation. Do what Jesus did with the woman at the well. Ask questions, listen, but that's time consuming, because you think, man, I got things to do, and I got to watch Love Island in 5 hours. So please, you know what, go and see a therapist. You know?
Wow. You talked about identity in all of that. You talked about, you know, struggling with who you were coming over here, but knowing who you were back in Nigeria. I've heard you speak about your collection of scarves. When do you find is it find your identity or re-find your identity? When do you come back to your identity and say, I know this is who I am now?
I think it's there's a moment of awakening, and then there's a constant knowing. Yeah, you're constantly. That's if you're willing to. Yeah. Because we live in the West. We're in a world of absolutes. Yeah. So I must be right, which is why some of the discussions we have are so tense, because I know I'm right and you're wrong. And if I wasn't right, I won't be. You know. Yeah. But actually, if we go by our worldview as Christians, it says we know in part, we prophesy in part. So actually, the me that I know now is different. I know myself a little better, a little more. What I thought I knew about myself 5 years ago, maybe it's not, because I'm understanding myself. Yeah. I'm unraveling the library I have, and unraveling my history and my biography, and so it's
Let me ask you this then, before you carry on. When was your awakening moment?
Man, I'm trying to remember a Kazam moment.
Or was it a series of things that happened over a period of time?
I think over time, it was a serious thing, but I think the catalyst was community. Yeah, the catalyst for me was community, because I found myself in a church community that was, I grew up Anglican, Church of England, but when I stumbled into what we call Pentecostalism,
Yep.
I stumbled into it in a black church. There's a movement called street pastors. The founder of it was then my youth leader, Les Isaacs.
Yeah.
My church was a black church, a lot of Africans, some Caribbeans.
Yeah.
I got to, and then the church was like a family, and it literally became my family. So I got to see Africans who were senior directors in companies. I got to see black West Indian mothers who were strong pillars in the community.
Yeah.
I got to see younger brothers who were great in academia. So I saw pictures of myself that made me think, oh, actually, it's okay to be me. It's okay to be black, you know. And slowly I came to myself.
Yeah.
And then in getting to a relationship with Jesus, came to myself some more. So I think my turning point, to borrow that phrase, was me finding community and being planted in community, and being able to see things that reflected positivity around me, that made me say, okay, I'm okay. It's okay to be me.
Yeah. So moving further in your story and kind of linking to that in terms of like finding yourself, you go to university, and you start doing business studies. You don't like it. you go to, is it East London University you went to?
Yep.
And then the last year of you doing business studies at East London University, you go to Westminster and start studying music. Does this link into you being confident in who you are, now saying, you know what, I want to do music. I've kind of done business studies because it's kind of along where my parents wanted me to go. Does that link into that? And how did you even manage to do business studies in your third year and music in your first year?
It's fascinating, and I tell you what, you should join the team at Premier, because you do much better than most of our presenters, man. You've done your research. Most if you ever see someone doing an interview and say, just tell us about yourself, or you know, then you know they haven't done the. But when they're doing what you're doing, so TVN, Channel 4, real deal. I'm telling you.
Make sure you cut that out so I can put. But yeah, how did you kind of balance that? And is that part of you finding your identity again?
It wasn't really confidence, you know. I mean, I'm sure there was a degree of that.
Yeah.
How it happened. My best friend Eddie Martin. He's a music producer. And the name's Quincy Jones.
Yeah.
He, back then we were both growing up. He wanted to do music like I did.
Yeah.
And I just stumbled across his course. Yeah. Now, it's the first time in this country that they would have a course of its kind, commercial music. Hitherto, it was courses, the kind of old style music courses that you have at Trinity or places like that. That's classical music focused on. This was commercial. This was pop music. Wow. This was put on by the record industry for the record industry to find what they called bright young things.
Yeah. The gems. Yeah.
This was the first year they would ever try it. So I saw it. So I'm thinking, oh my God, this would be great for Eddie. Yeah, honestly, like this would be great for Eddie. So,
thought you was gonna
so I call Eddie. I said, oh my God, I just found a course for you. It's gonna be great. Da 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 da. So he said, okay. So I took the stuff to him, and I'm like, we need to book an appointment to go and for you to go on an audition. And as we're talking, it was like, this course would be all right for you too, isn't it? Yeah, that's fine. But Eddie, come on. So I talked to him. I talked him into, or he talked to me into. We go to apply for the course. Now, when we called the course, of course, first time, so it was hugely popular.
Yeah.
The university said, whoever we spoke to said to me, oh, the course is fully booked. No. So I guess maybe this is where the confidence thing came in. Because I thought, if she's telling me it was fully booked, I'm talking to the wrong person. So I called the business department, because I was a business studies. I said, I'm a business studies person from East London University. And they said, oh, yeah, assume that I went to convert to business studies. I didn't say nothing. So I got forms. I got a couple of forms. We filled it for music. Then we went over to the site, which is in Harrow, and we asked them, I said to them, where is the music department? They said, it's downstairs. So went downstairs, got there and said, who's the head of music? They point to a guy called Norton York, who was the man that started the course. And we're still very good friends now, Norton. So I said, this is who we are. These are our forms. And we're happy to audition for you. And he was like, okay. So we auditioned. And I forget what song. It was one of these church songs. And I remember Eddie just playing, because Eddie is a musician. I'm singing. Eddie's playing, I'm singing, and we kept modulating them. And after a while, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
It's cool.
Just stop. You know. And then at that point, he did something that I think he thought was a way to sift, because he probably felt bad about saying.
Yeah.
So he said to me that I could do the course so long as I did
Business.
my final year at the same time. Now I'm like, yeah, whatever. As I was doing business studies, final year, and doing first year of music. It was nuts. I lost my hair. My girlfriend left me. You know, yeah, it was nuts. But you know what? It was
worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Even her leaving me was worth it, because if it wasn't for that, you know.
So at what point do your parents accept the fact that you're now going to do music? Because considering you've gone to do business studies, and obviously you didn't like accounting, as you've said in other interviews and told me prior to, at what point do they accept, okay, we're happy with where you're going with kind of the music standpoint, and more so from a media standpoint, because you also went into that as well?
Yeah. So I don't think, I never had the conversation with my parents. I think probably for my father was just glad, because I think he had swallowed the pill of, you know, my son is not so bright. So maybe my mum, I think when I started working at Sony, that was a high point for them, because I thought, oh, he's got a normal job.
Yeah.
For me, one of the, if there are regrets, I wish my parents were alive when I was awarded an OBE, because I think that would have meant a huge deal to them, because my family were royalists, my mother especially, and my sisters. My sister used to keep a scrapbook of Princess Margaret, you know, back then. I'm like, who is Princess who? You know? Yeah. So to be honored and to be the first ever Christian musician in the UK to be given an OBE was a big deal for me. I mean, I still think it's a mistake. I think so. I say I took the award to my village and hid it. So if they come back for it, I'm sorry. It's in Africa somewhere. Go and look for it yourself. You know. But I wish my mother was around for her to see that God made no mistakes, because she had received a promise from God that he was going to give her a son, and that the son would be something special for her. So everything they saw me growing up didn't reflect.
Match that.
Yeah, it didn't. And especially for how we measure successes.
Yeah.
And so for them to be alive, to have been alive when I was, first one to sell out the O2 or Indigo 2, the Apollo and places like that, Royal Festival Hall and things like that. If they had been alive, that would have meant something to them. But alas, it wasn't to be. So for me, if there were ever any regrets, I wish my parents were alive to see some of these things, because then it would have been easy for them to embrace it.
You talked about your parents and them not being here and them passing away, and obviously in the way in which your father was assassinated. How does your father's, and how that came about, how does that impact you from at that point, and how does that impact you now? And how does your mother as well not being here impact you?
Whew. Let me tell you. I'll tell you in this way. When I would go to Turning Point, for Turning Point, you asked about, I think, earlier on, every month or every other month I would travel to the States to film. And I realized over a period of a year or so, and it always happened whenever I landed in Virginia Beach, and my process is, when I get, even if I'm going for a day, I empty out all my belongings. I make it like my room, hang up my clothes and everything. As soon as I do that and I lay on the bed and I sleep, I had the same dream, same recurring dream. Dream is, I'm with my two sons. I'm taking them around, and then I have to stop to do something. I put them somewhere to turn to do something. I turn, they're gone. And I start panicking. It happened again and again and again. And it took me a while to realize that what was playing out was the leftover of my own snatching from my parents. And here was I had a hidden fear that the same thing would happen with my sons. And so on the one hand, that showed up in my dreams like that. On the other hand, in my dealings with my son, I could be sometimes overbearing, because I'm always watching them, and and sometimes my wife would be like, chill, leave them alone. But which is what goes back to what we said earlier on about when you see people presenting something, you don't ask to see what's behind it. You just think, what's wrong with that Negro? Relax. Maybe he's on drugs. Well, the fact that he's on drugs could be because, So for me, that was because of the fear that I had that what happened to me might happen to my sons. So that's how all that affected me and played out in me. And it's taken me time to unravel that, and we're still in the process. We're still in the process of unraveling that. But I'm glad to be self-aware, to know that something's not quite right. Because a year of dreaming that you lost yourself and then panicking, it's madness. And the panic you feel is real. The brain doesn't know that this is just a simulation.
It's true. How do you then bring those kind of experiences into your music, or how hard is it to do that? To be real and to be vulnerable and to be open?
Oh no, it's quite easy for me, actually. It's quite easy for me. So there was a song I wrote when I was thinking about, it's called Safe in His Hands. I was thinking about the moment my father was assassinated, and then my brother being shot. And I remember the night my brother was shot, I was leaving Premier Radio, and I fell asleep in the taxi, and I had a dream that he had died on the same stretch of road as my dad. And when I got home, about 4 a.m., I got a call saying my brother had been shot with an AK-47. but fortunately it missed his major artery by 5 inches. If it hit him, he would have died. And so things like that, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about being displaced in myself. I'm thinking of all these things. So I start to write the words, safe from every storm, come whatever may. One thing is for sure, remains the same. The friends I thought I had, they all come and they go. Because, of course, that was my experience at school. I'd never had friends. They were, they were always in transit. And then family also gone in that, the very day I should have seen, or week I should have seen my dad, he's gone. And we're scattered all over the place, my family, you can't see. But then the chorus, I am safe in his hands, which is my experience of God in the present. He will keep me from harm, because one of the side effects of those things is you always feel under siege. Yeah, you always feel under siege. You feel unprotected. You feel not even just economically, psychologically. You feel. Let me tell you, before I came on set, I went into the bathroom, the men's toilets, and 2 of my presenters are in there. One called Ibe Giant Killer, one called Charles. They're in the cubicle, and I'm coming in, and the first thing I do is I recce the room. I look to see if there's any, instinctively, I look to see, okay, is there any present danger? And I position myself to use the urinal in a way that if anything come, I could flip and fight. Just take your wee and leave. What is your problem? But that's the mindset that adversity can build in you, where you're constantly watching for a fight. So when I wrote the words, I'm safe in his hands, he'll keep me from harm, that's me telling myself, chill. You don't have to be ready for a fight every 2 minutes. God has got you, yeah, so pray for me.
Wow. I've heard when you've had interviews, people say you're like an onion because there's so many layers to you in terms of, and you ask them, did you smile? At that point in time when they said that. But I've heard people say you've got many layers to you in terms of what you do. But during this interview, during this conversation, I feel like you've got many layers to who you are, which I think is way more important than what you do. And before I continue, I want to just say thank you for your transparency and your openness. In just explaining your story, because a lot of people, as I've said, probably don't know this about you. They see you as the person that does premier gospel, they see you as the person that's on the stage, but you sharing this is going to not only help them to see a greater side of you, but it's going to help them to understand themselves and trying to understand other people. So just want to say I appreciate that before I forget. Thank you. I want to make sure that's in there.
Very kind of you.
Let's move into Uncle Muyiwa, the gospel, the singer-songwriter. How did you feel your experience at Sony and Channel 4 to a degree has helped you to kind of set yourself apart within the music industry that you're in?
I think inevitably when you have experience of something, it just becomes part of your thought process and decision making. And I think for me, the experience of Sony helped me to learn. I mean, I was already a hard-working person. And I think what made the most difference, apart from the favor of God, was hard work. I came into the gospel environment and found people who were complaining. This is back then. They're still complaining now about how, 1, it's a small market. 2, no one supports. 3, and whilst they were talking, I was working. And that's, for me, that I learned from. I mean, I looked after, when I was in Sony, I worked with Mariah, Bob Dylan, Maxwell, Aerosmith. One of the ones that stuck in my mind was Fugees, but not all of Fugees, Wyclef. Now, Clef would Fugees would land 6 a.m. in the morning in London. By 9 a.m. in the morning, Clef is in the studio recording. Then you spend the day doing all sorts of interviews.
Yeah.
Then leave London at 8 p.m. to Paris. Do a show in Paris. Finish a show. Go into the studio. Work for... So I realized what some people call lucky. It's just hard work. And I saw the same thing with Destiny's Child. You see. So unconsciously you make notes of those things. So for me, while people were, and I tell you this, the first, I mean, it's hilarious how we got to making gospel music, but you know, the first album we recorded was Restoration. That's the album where you get Our God is Good, which we just re-released. And I remember recording that album. We decided this is a certain sound we're going for because there's a certain market we wanted to reach.
Yeah.
So I wasn't just doing gospel because I like it. I wanted to reach a particular praise and worship contingent. Then I was more interested in, because I looked at the market and thought, at this point, and some people might be offended at this. At this point, the entry point that'll be more, that'll be quicker and help more would be the white market. So let's create this sound, and what had the bigger global share of the market was Hosanna Integrity music.
Yeah.
So let's create something like that. So that's what we went for. I remember doing it, and then sending a copy to Marcia Dixon, who then was, Marcia Dixon was the Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and the newspapers. And I sent it to Marcia. And she was honest enough to come back and say, sorry, it's not my thing, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Now, most artists, even now, would...
Stop there.
Yeah, they'll take her mind, she's like, no, she don't, I'm caught by God. Because she might... I thought, okay, she doesn't like it. That's cool. I don't need her to like it. I just need her to be on my side. So I sent her flowers to say thank you and sent her a card to say thank you. That was a part of what began to change, because she was like,
why are you saying thank you for such advice? For what I'm telling you.
You know? And slowly over time, she got to now not just know the music, got to know who I was and who we were. And she thought, yeah, I want to support these kids. She became our biggest support. And so when you do that, you realize that, and it's a saying I have, your work will not speak for you. People will speak for you. So we've got a lot of, in the UK, we've got a lot of brilliant artists. Their work is brilliant, but they themselves are not, you know, people engage them. I mean, I was just at an event in Manchester Arena. Manchester Arena is a 20,000 seater venue. We had 15,000 people in there. I've done that event for 12 years. And I've seen, I mean, we've had everyone from Kirk to Mary, all of them.
Yeah.
This year, we had a good number of artists. And I remember meeting one particular artist, and I thought, whew, there's no congruence between your music and what you do on stage and who you are. And funny enough, I had 2 calls during and after about that artist, because other churches want to book them. I said, no, don't waste your time. So the artist's work speaks volume. It's banging, but it's someone speaking. And I said to the people, that's how two bookings were. So people will speak for you, not your work. And I think I learned that early and thought, let's put the time in. Let's put the time in and keep improving myself. Not trying to live so you please people, but live so people understand that you've come to make their lives better and not be a pain. And I think that's part of what propelled what we were doing, and a number of it just happened moments. And I have a whole a whole book of that. It just, this just happened, which means that just happened, that just happened, you know. So we were quite fortunate, but fortune meeting hard work, meeting favor of God makes a difference.
I like that. And I think there's a lot of gems you've said in there that you've talked about in your journey, but you've also encouraged those going on a similar journey through what you said. And I think that's really important, and I hope they take that as that rather than taking it as something else.
we know how people in UK can take it something else, and they will crucify you on Twitter. So you know, I'm up for it.
But yeah, but there was some gems in there, like honestly. So I hope they do take it that way. My last couple of questions to you: with all that you do, how do you find time for you, and how do you find time for family?
How do I find time? I think I'm fortunate in that I have a wife who I can't imagine anyone else who can live with me like yeah, I can't imagine it. I think if I'd married the person I really wanted to marry, I'd be divorced by now. Yeah, she would have left me high and dry.
It wouldn't have worked.
She'd be like, you know, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
But my wife, she's a gem. So she's the rock that she glue that keeps everything together, which allows me the room. So it's about scheduling, it's about prioritizing, but I have the blessing of being able to do so many things because I'm freed up to do it. And also this peace at home, this shalom at home, because you're traveling where? When there's fight in the house, you're going, you mad? You're going where? She'll lock you up, or you lock her up, or something. So because there's peace at home, because there's a degree of stability at home, it allows me that. So that I think is a big thing. And then God's been kind to me. People have allowed me, like Premier allows me the flexibility to be able to do what I do in the States, or do with the airlines, or when I do music. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be able to do it. So it's just, I'm just fortunate, you know, that's been so.
That's good. And I can understand. I speak to my friends all the time about having that peace at home. So when you come in, it's peaceful, and when you leave, it's peaceful. So then you've got that room to do what you can do, and when you're trying to, you know, work for the family and stuff like that. As long as it's peaceful, then it doesn't cause friction. Yep. My last question to you, which I ask everyone at the end of my interviews and the conversations: with where you're at in life right now, what advice would you give to yourself?
With where I'm at, what advice would I give to myself? What, retrospectively, or
with where you're at right now in life, what advice would you give to yourself? So
I'll say a number of things.
Now. Okay.
I'll say a number of things. Firstly, I would say, make sure you hassle your uncle, who's your accountant, so that tax bill he just gave you, you don't have to deal with. Because I'm sorry, I saw my tax bill and I fainted. I'm like, Lord, is this possible? How can this thing be? So I would say, get your tax situation and your vehicles sorted quickly. Yeah, I would say, yeah, learn to enjoy the moment. Because I realized, and this is years back, I remember going to Indigo 2 at the O2 to watch someone play, and they'd given me VIP tickets, and I looked and I thought, oh, this place is beautiful. And I thought, hold on, I've sold out this place a couple of times. So, and I realized I didn't know the venue. I didn't enjoy the venue. And I realized as I went to different venues that I'd sold out, I'd never enjoyed it. I was too focused on, let's just get this thing done, that I didn't enjoy.
You wasn't present.
Yeah. And I'm trying to learn that, to be present. Be present with the children, be present at home, be present. Enjoy, don't always be reaching for
The next thing.
the next thing. I would advise myself to do that. I would advise myself to take more seriously your physical health, because you won't believe it. I used to have a flat stomach. Now it's not just cosmetics. When you have a 1-pack the size of mine, it gets awkward to try and tie your shoelaces sometimes. So I would say, listen to your wife and take your diet and your exercise more seriously.
Yeah. Sorry.
So those are just some of the things, some of the advice I would give to myself. But I would definitely say, in terms of your business, jump on stuff harder. Invest bigger. Yeah, invest bigger, and so you can free yourself up to do more.
This has been a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
So much.
Thank you. Thank
We
you.
have been sitting with the amazing Uncle Muyiwa, is what we're going to call him from now on. This has been a conversation with Haych, and we'll have more content coming for you very, very soon.